On October 11th, 2013, the last of the conspirators responsible for the June 19, 2012 Hobbs Act robbery of Soul Foods in South Sioux City, Nebraska, and the July 13th, 2012 Hobbs Act robbery of Sarge's Mini Mart here in Sioux City, Iowa, and other crimes as well, such as a large gun burglary, drive-by shooting, and an aborted robbery, was sentenced in federal court. This interstate criminal conspiracy was brought to justice by a strong interagency and intergovernmental partnership. The community should be proud of how the city, county, state, and federal governments work together to quickly end this threat and solve these crimes. These acts were well planned, even to the point that they would use state lines to complicate the investigation and protect them from justice. This case is part of Project Safe Neighborhoods, which is a cooperative local, state, and federal program aimed at the enhanced prosecution of gun crimes. This case was investigated by the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, Firearms, and Explosives, the Sioux City and South Sioux City Police Departments, the Woodbury and Dakota County Attorney's Office. This case was prosecuted federally by Assistant U.S. Attorney Ford Fairchild. Then I'll ask Tim here, he can come up and talk to you about the Hobbs Act.
Thanks, Chief. The Hobbs Act is a statute that allows for federal prosecutions to occur when individuals have unlawfully acted to restrict interstate commerce. Essentially, if an institution that buys and sells goods in interstate commerce is robbed or otherwise impacted by a crime, then the Hobbs Act can be used to conduct a federal prosecution. By and large, most of the prosecutions for robberies within one district are confined to state prosecutions, but in this case we had two particular grounds for federal jurisdiction. One is because this particular group chose to rob places both in the Northern District of Iowa, but also across the river in South Sioux City, Nebraska. And for that reason, that's why the cooperation that was involved here between the South Sioux City Police Department, the Sioux City Police Department, the Dakota County Attorney's Office, Woodbury County Attorney's Office, and the federal agencies, the ATF and the U.S. Attorney's Office, was so important here. And you should keep in mind that the individuals that perpetrated these robberies counted on the fact that by crossing state lines, they might confound their prosecution. That if they committed a robbery in South Sioux City in Nebraska and then drive across the bridge into Iowa to share out the loot, that somehow would prevent the authorities from prosecuting them or from doing it in a significant manner. And I think what they learned is that's not correct. That these agencies, Chief Young and South Sioux City Police Department, as well as the federal agencies, are going to work together, did work together in this case, and as a result, I think there was significant prosecution against a group of armed robbers who robbed not one place but two, who committed an armed robbery, one of the armed robberies where there was a man and a woman and their 4 children present, all of whom had to lay on the floor at gunpoint. And so these were significant violent criminals that were taken off the streets because of that cooperation. So I thank Chief Young for the opportunity to speak. Appreciate it.
And we'll this will be the time, if you've got any questions that you've got that we could probably answer for you. So,
Doug, there's a lot of armament back there. How many guns do you have on display, and were those taken from, I take it, all of the suspects?
And Tim, you might have to take this one too, because you...
There's approximately 33 weapons back there. The way this case in part became a collaboration is that the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms, ATF, was investigating illegal weapon sales. And during the course of that investigation, they ran into one of the individuals who ends up being part of the group that robbed Soul Foods in South Sioux City and Sarge's Mini Mart here in Sioux City, David Johnson. And so they were investigating Mr. Johnson for the sale of illegal weapons. That investigation dovetailed into the robbery investigations because Mr. Johnson sold a weapon that was involved in one of the robberies or had possession of it. And so both ATF and the local law enforcement agencies both had reason to investigate Mr. Johnson, and when they became aware of that, then they cooperated. And so those weapons were the fruits of the ATF part of that investigation, and those were all taken off the streets, which is a good thing.
What happens to all of those guns now? Do you destroy them, or where do they go?
After their evidentiary value, if they don't have any more value as evidence in any of the pending investigations, I believe that they're destroyed. Did anybody have any other questions?
Yeah, can you say at what point more specifically brought federal action in on this case?
In terms of a date, I can't give you a date. I mean, obviously, you know that these robberies took place in the summer of 2012. So that part of the investigation into the robberies started then and went through where we began to indict and commence the prosecution. I think it was about 6 months later that started. In terms of putting a precise point on when we learned that there was also a federal weapons connection with David Johnson, usually pretty quickly. These agencies, again, they work well together, and so they talk to each other, and they have meetings where they get together and meet as task force agencies. I mean, there's a task force here that has representatives from Sioux City PD, from Sioux City PD, from ATF, from DEA. And so these guys get together once a month or so and they talk, and so they're able to share intelligence. So I can't put a date on it for you, but I would say probably pretty early in the investigation. So probably, sometime in the late summer, early fall of 2012.
Can you say more about how Johnson was caught selling weapons illegally, how that unraveled?
I can't at this time.
Hey, Chief, was it ever uncovered, or was it ever released what exactly was stolen at the two mini marts, a dollar amount?
I don't have the dollar amount. I could probably see if I can get that for you unless you've got the dollar amount. I know there was currency taken.
My recollection is that I'm going to give you approximates here. I think it was approximately $9,000 from Soul Foods and approximately $600 from Sarg's Mini Mart. I'm not 100% sure of those numbers, but I think those are close.
Everything recovered?
I don't remember how much of the cash was recovered. It was not all recovered.
Was all this stuff, recovered as part of this investigation? And I guess there's this bag of white substance in this, I'm assuming that's drugs of some kind?
Correct. Yeah, I believe it was crack cocaine that was also seized in some of the searches that were done as part of this investigation.
And what was the quantity of that drug?
I believe it was approximately 20 grams.
So other than the drugs, weapons, and money, anything else?
No. Other than the fact that I think you've got some very happy victims in this case, people who I think anytime you're a victim of a violent crime, I think you feel a lot more secure just in going about your daily life and your daily business to know that the people that did that to you are in prison. And I think if you're somebody who works in a grocery store or works in a convenience store here in Siouxland, I think you have to be happy with the fact that your law enforcement is out there, that they are going to investigate these crimes, they are going to find who did it, and they are going to make sure that those people are taken out of the community. And I think that's a comfort, because I think sometimes, if you're the guy working the night shift at Casey's, I mean, it's a real threat. It's something that you hate to see people come through your door, and the next thing you know, there's a weapon there. I think that really impacts the security that people feel when they're just trying to do their jobs. And so that's why I congratulate law enforcement in this matter. They did a good job. They got this case solved quickly, and they got the right people arrested quickly. So I think in terms of impact, I think it's a great thing. I think it's when people understand that's how it's going to work, maybe fewer people want to try to commit these crimes in our community.
It looks like Bailey, Johnson, and Fields got the most time. Is that just because were they the ones involved in both robberies? I can't remember. Or did what? There has
Bailey
to do with
Fields,
the,
and Johnson were both involved in both robberies, so you've correctly identified that as one circumstance that would account for their longer sentences. There are also other things that impact federal sentencing in terms of criminal history and some other factors in terms of their involvement in the crimes themselves. I don't specifically have their criminal histories in front of me, and so I couldn't tell you how that necessarily impacted, but certainly the fact that they were involved in both robberies would be a major contributor to their longer sentences.
And was there something about the nature of the weapons that added time onto their sentencing?
Yeah, they're a legal weapon. In this particular case, it was a sawed-off shotgun with an obliterated serial number. And so anytime you have a sawed-off gun that's shorter than the legal limit, then that's an illegal weapon, and that does add time. That's an aggravating circumstance under the sentencing guidelines.
able to link any of the weapons to any other crimes around here?
I don't have information on that. I don't believe so, but I don't have specific information on that.
Is the investigation into illegal weapon sales ongoing at this point with Johnson, and is that part of something larger?
We really don't comment on ongoing investigations, so that wouldn't be information that I would be able to share with you.
But it is still ongoing?
I can't say.
Okay.
Thanks.